It may not seem obvious at first, but there's an entire industry based on content moderation of your favorite social media or sharing websites, places where you could post a photo, or anyone could post a photo. A lot of these sites employ a huge, massive, often offshore team to be able to weed through different photos. Maybe if something's very objectionable or offensive, remove it so that it would not decrease traffic or revenue to these very popular sites. For instance, very often sometimes it'll be a very overtly sexual picture, or maybe someone being beheaded, or mutilated bodies, or just very visceral images that might offend people. And it's this massive industry that works in it. I used to do something very similar for a company that I've agreed not to talk about, but I did content moderation like this. And what's interesting about this is a lot of the people who work for these content moderation places don't actually live in the United States. It's of course much cheaper for these big companies to pay someone under different standards. So actually, the Philippines has become very popular for content moderation because Filipino culture is not incredibly divergent. Well, it's different, but there are many similarities between Filipino and U.S. culture, and there's an ability to understand that better. But what's interesting about this is you wouldn't think it would be so laborious to moderate these photos, but actually the laborers who keep the dick pics and beheadings off of your feeds, it weighs on them quite a bit.
I can imagine, you know, it's like that is your day, is seeing all that stuff. I'm going to look
at dead bodies, festering, horrible blue waffle, bad things.
Yeah. Lots of racism, lots of disgusting things, lots of you know, death and gore and all kinds of stuff. And I guess that there's no algorithm for picking this stuff out with any sort of reliability, so it has to be done by hand. And sometimes twice.
Well, because it can be hidden. It can be not quite recognizable with the technology we have right now. So what'll happen is a lot of times these laborers will need counseling. And the number I had seen was that many of these people leave the job after 6 months because it is just too much. Like, this is the last beheading I want to look at, I'm done. I hate this job, it is weighing on me psychologically. That's not really what happened to me in my job. I was more like, I'm tired of this. I was actually more tired of maybe some text things that I was reading. So more of like the racism, sexism, just really extreme cruelty toward others. But I never needed counseling like this. This must be crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, these people are dealing with like the worst society has to offer. So I can definitely imagine how that weighs on you.
I mean, even worse, they're dealing with everything society has to offer, and they have to look for the worst stuff. Yeah. They have to actively pay attention and find those disturbing, disgusting images amongst pictures of food and babies and grandmas and stuff.
So their eye is just trained to find only that.
Find horror, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I'd heard something similar about this, about 911 operators. Like, there's a very high turnover in that job because they're faced with these, well, not necessarily people being horrible, but horrible things happening to people.
Yeah.
And it's just, a lot of counseling is needed. A lot of people leave the job very soon, I think 6 months or less for many of them, because it's just too psychologically demanding and crazy and intense and hard to deal with as a human being. I know this is your community manager for Insomniac. Yes. I know you don't deal with anything this crazy from Insomniac, or do you?
No, not like the beheadings and stuff like that. You have people that get very upset with you, for sure. Like, and people that will vocalize their anger in crazy, crazy ways. And at first, honestly, when I started the job, I wasn't expecting that, especially for us, because we were PlayStation exclusive for so long, and then we announced an Xbox exclusive. And that was just, whew. Gamers can be a little, I love them to death, but they can be very passionate.
And protective.
Yes, and protective. So they, it was a lot of anger. And that, when I first started the job, it was like, I was surprised. It was a little difficult to overcome, but eventually, there's always more good than bad, which is very, very nice. And the bad, it's just the vocal minority is kind of what you think about it. So, but no, I don't get beheadings. Occasionally we do get interesting pictures of Ratchet.
I would imagine genitals are involved.
Maybe, possibly.
Oh, God.
But even that, it's almost kind of sweet because they love him so much.
You know what you should do? Just Google Sonic the Hedgehog and see what happens.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that'll be good.
There's a very similar fan base right there, or some of them.
Yeah.
When I started this article, I was like, okay, well, I've seen videos of beheadings, I've seen my fair share of dick pics, and even like really bad car crashes on Russian dash cams. But like, hearing somebody say, you know, I really get affected by bestiality with children. I have to stop for a moment and go to Starbucks or something to clear my head. It's like, people are posting this stuff on the internet and it has to be scrubbed off. And it blows your mind that it's 100,000 people's job to look for that. That's so awful.
Yeah.
Maybe it blows our mind because they've been doing such a good job at it, or it hasn't been such a huge problem before. People posting pedophilia and bestiality and horrible.
Can you imagine if that stuff like
violence.
popped up on Facebook and you saw it, like anytime you went to Facebook?
I would be pretty surprised,
Yeah,
to say the least.
as would my mother.
Probably, yeah. Well, a lot of this they called the grandma rule. It's if, you know, someone's, perhaps a grandmother saw something and got offended and wouldn't come back to the website. But I would say if we're looking at, you know, horrible acts of gruesome brutality, pedophilia, bestiality, those are, you know, I think most people might be offended by that or not want to be surprised by it when they're going to a normal trip to a social media site. And then this entire industry of people has to keep watching out for it. It is literally their job, and it is a growing industry because it is becoming more and more of a necessity. So it's pretty shocking to hear about that.
Social media works both ways.
It certainly does.
Yeah, it can be an amazing thing. Most of the time it's an amazing thing, but it also opens you up to some not great things. So it's something we're figuring out, honestly, as like a society, just because we haven't had it that long. We haven't had super immediate connection to each other for that long of a time. So I think, honestly, we're just all learning exactly how to deal with it.
We're all learning how to deal with how horrible some people can be, I suppose.
You're connected with way more people
Yeah.
than you ever thought you could be or wanted to be.
Yeah.
And you're not in control of the people that you're connected to, and that's what these content moderators are looking out for.
Well, there's certainly some growing pains. Let us know what you think about all of this industry, and the necessity for it below in the comments, and please be sure to subscribe.